Hello, Hare Krishna, and welcome back to the Atma Paradigm. We're on the 8th, and actually the final talk within this section, part 2, which has been dealing with matter and reality. And today we conclude this study of matter with the metaphysics of information, how matter is manipulated by the modes of nature. And we shall explain what we mean by all of that as we go along. I appreciate that this particular part 2 has been rather packed with some technical information and jargon, but I hope that you've been able to follow it as best you can. Today we will also be including some new terms and terminology. But I hope that, again, it will be clear what the purposes of all of these are, because they're crucial to complete our metaphysical framework, which we will then put into action and application within the next section, life, and later on, the universe. So, previously on the Atma Paradigm, we set ourselves 3 questions to be answered. Do our thoughts and desires have agency? And how do non-neural thoughts give rise to biochemical processes? And this is a contravention of physics and conservation of energy. And working through both theory and also giving some examples in the use of some experiments that have been done in various ways, we demonstrated, I believe, that our thoughts and desires can have agency. And also we showed that there are possible routes by which non-neural thoughts could give rise to biochemical processes in the brain and thereby initiate neural activity, i.e. thoughts can affect brain activity. And we explored how this could be done without contravention of physics or worrying about conservation of energy. Hence, our thesis is that will arising from the conscious entity, i.e. consciousness has the ability to express will, and that will is then developed as non-neural intention within the mind. Will is converted into the intention for us to achieve things. And that produces, and that intention is manifest in desires, ideas, thoughts, all sorts of schemes that we have. And these have the potency to produce the effects of action and manifestation within physical reality. Now, how is that all happening? And that's the subject for this week. We develop these ideas further, and we want to explore information as a fundamental feature that underpins the workings of the world as we know it. So we start with the idea of intention and information and linking those together. We've said will is expressed by consciousness, and that produces intention within the mind. So intention is information in mental stuff. It's a psychological, mental form of information. And then we have information within the properties. So information as intention informs the properties that underlie physical stuff and how they manifest and the activities that they carry out. So intention is information in mental stuff. Intention produces the information content of physical properties, and these physical observable properties can be said to be information in physical stuff. So now we want to kind of really understand, well, information, what is it? So we're going to look at these questions today. We're going to give a definition that we can work with. And information, what does it do? What is it? In ontological terms, you know, is it real? Is it not? Where does it come from? How does it affect something? How is it modified, and what effects does that produce? So looking at a definition, there's a couple of definitions. One of them is facts about something. Now facts are useful. They are mental ideas. So a fact, for instance, what's the capital of Albania? It's Tirana. So that's useful. It's a mental idea. It's about something concrete, Albania and Tirana, but the actual fact itself is a mental bit of information. Now, that information is also something that has even more tangible than just something which is remembered within the mind. It is something real that is inside something else that is real. Information is that which makes it what it is. So that's in the second one, which is also numbered 1 for some reason. So information, another definition of information is what is represented by a particular arrangement or sequence of things. So to give you an example, my name is Akhandadhi. So that is a fact. However, how my name is spelt is information about the arrangements of those letters, A, K, H, A, N, D, A, D, H, I, etc. So there's a difference between the fact and the information. Or I like granola for breakfast, but that's a fact. But to get the granola, to prepare it the way I like, there's a certain bit of information that defines the arrangement and sequence. You get your granola, add say half a cup of whole milk, and a good squirt of maple syrup. That's the information content of my breakfast, rather than just being the fact. So this is our context for the use of the term information. That stuff that defines the arrangement or order of other real stuff. So in that case, if information has the ability to define the arrangement or order of real stuff, information itself has to have some form of reality. And to help us understand this real nature of information, we're going to look at various aspects of it. But first, let's see how it sort of manifests. One of the simplest ways we use intention is to make choices. So choice is the use of intentional information to reduce a wide range of options down to just one or maybe a few. So choosing what clothes to wear in the morning. It's cold out, I want to be warm. Okay, that's my intention. I want to be warm. That intention will affect my choice of the clothes that I pick out for myself. What career should I follow? Well, if I have the intention, I want to make serious money, well, that intention will remove some of the options shown in the little picture here, you know. And another one, beans. Let's focus on the supermarket shelf full of all the varieties of the beans. Okay, so intention as choice will reduce this huge range of options we have to one or a few preferences. In this case, my intention is going to reduce all those possible beans I could have chosen that are there waiting for me. But I've reduced all that range down to one choice: Heinz organic baked beans. So what was the information content of my intention? Well, I went to the supermarket looking for beans. I'm a vegetarian, I like cooking with beans. But instead of getting the dry goods, I kind of thought, well, I want to save time. Therefore, I'll get ready-made baked beans. Okay? So this is, my intention is starting to focus my choices. And out of all these different types, the supermarket own brand, Heinz baked beans, that we all know they're the best. Others are available. And which of the Heinz baked beans do I like? Well, organic baked beans. I think they might be somehow better for me and better for the environment. So out of all my intentions, that my intention has manifested as information, bringing me to the choice of Heinz organic baked beans. So intention contained certain information that directed my choice. So you can say my intention contained at least 4 preferences that became encoded as bits of information in my final choice. So choice reduces a range of options down to just a few preferences, but it also specifies how we might mix bits of the various options together. And this is where it kind of gets a little more complex. For instance, here we are at a vegetarian buffet. There's so many things. You're not going to be able to eat them all. You're not even going to be able to eat a little bit of each of them. There's just so much to choose from. But your choice, your preferences in terms of what you like, what you feel like eating, what you think will nourish you, will determine, I'll take a little bit of this, I'll mix it with a little bit of that, I'll have some of the rice, oh, that looks like a nice samosa there, and we mix it together. So choices can get very complex. And what I want to do is just play a little game with you. This is Countdown. For those, I think in the UK, you're all familiar with this. It tends to be the program, a television game show of choice for the older generation. But I know a lot of students who've got time on their hands also watch it. I don't know if there's other versions around the world, but here's how it works. Basically, one of the games within the show is that you have 9 letters picked randomly. And the idea is that you should try and create the longest word you can out of those letters. You don't have to use all the letters, but you can't use any of the letters more than once. So have a little look at that for a moment, see what you can do for yourself. What's the longest word that you can get out of that? Normally you've got 30 seconds on the show. I'm not sure I can afford to give you that whole time, but see what you can see quickly. There's quite a few words in there. Well, here's some that come up, and they're of different lengths. We have a few 4-letter words, reed, barn, ears. We have some 5-letter words, rains, beads, nerds, deer, singer. We have some 6-letter, rain, desire, brain, snare, erased, and abides. We have a few 7s, inbreds, aniseed, binders, airbeds. And we've got a few 8s, beardies, rebiased, and nearside. And I don't believe you can get a 9 out of it. We're going to pick one of them. Brains, that's going to be our choice, for the obvious reason that we've been talking about it through the last few lectures. So the idea is that we have used information in 2 ways. We have looked at our 9 letters and we have chosen a few of those. We've chosen 6 of those items from the range, the R, the N, B, I, A and S. And then we've done a second thing. We've applied information to order those 6 letters in a particular sequence and produced this word brains. That's our choice. So information used to choose and to order. Now, next question really is, what is the difference between the group of letters, the 9 letters at the top, and the word brains that we have chosen? Well, the group of letters just seems random. It doesn't have meaning. It doesn't have coherence. Whereas the word is specific. It contains some extra information that we have added through our choice, through our ordering. And therefore it conveys meaning, as a word. And maybe it has even some extra connotation and meaning for ourselves. And so what is the relationship between the group of letters and the word we've chosen? Well, the word is produced from and is contained within the group. We wouldn't have been able to produce the word brains if the components, the B, R, A, I, and S, wasn't included within the group. But it wasn't obvious in the group. It was just part of a pool of letters. So the group is the potential pool of ingredients or components for the word that I have chosen. Third question then, which is better, which is greater, which is more important, the group or the individual, the word we've chosen, which is more important? And when you actually look at it, you could argue back and forwards on this. We could probably take a poll and be split on it. Some might think, well, the word's more important because that is specific, it has meaning. And someone else would say, well, the group is more important because that was the pool, the potential that produced the individual word. And what you tend to find is this, that the group of letters is more important to us as a group of people. So the pool, the potential is more important because it serves many people. Whereas the word I chose was more important to me. It contains my input. I have constructed it. I have chosen, I have ordered it. It's important to me individually. And this is an important principle that will be at work. That when we look at potential and we look at how we have made choices for the specific. So, potential and specific. We have information acting on a potential group of letters, and that imposes choice and order. So information is now being manifest as choice and order information on that group. And that is producing specification, i.e. we have produced something specific. We have taken certain letters, we put them in a certain order, we have a particular word, brains. So information has collapsed the potential state of the pool of letters into something specific. Now you could say brains as a group of letters is also another potential. You could make other letters from that, but not as many as you could from the 9. So every time potential collapses into specific, even though it could collapse again into something even more specific, the options, the scope, the range gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And this is an important feature within the workings of material nature, because nature, physics, you see it in physics, you see it in biology. It likes to give wide options. And in fact, the universe, you could say, gives the widest option. But through choice and order, it becomes more and more specified. So the potential starts to collapse into specifics, which themselves can into further specifics, until really it's got very little scope for any further reduction and collapsing. So now I want to introduce you to 3 terms here. We've got information, we've got potential, we've got specific. All right, and I've explained what the information does. It imposes choice and order, and it is specifying. It defines how the word is. So information we call the efficient cause, and potential is the material cause. And I'll explain those in a little bit in more detail in a minute, but I just want to introduce you to them now. Information as the efficient cause, because it is saying how things should be done. Potential as the material cause, because those were the components or the ingredients that were used in order to create the specific. So the specific effect is the combination of both the action of the efficient cause on the pool or range of the material cause. And this is the key principle at work. So how the world becomes so precisely specified, where does all the information come? That will be a big subject for us in the weeks to come. Let me just give you 3 principles of cause and effect that arise from what we've just been talking about. That the input of information as choice and order turns a set of potential options into a specific outcome. The properties of a specific outcome are always contained, though they may not be visible, they may seem latent, but they're always contained within the potential source. The effect is always present within its cause. And out of the 2 situations, the potential is more important to the group, whereas the specific is more important to the individual. So, source of information. Okay, we've got information providing choice and order. Where does it come from? And this is the big question for anyone involved in science or philosophy. And the standard view of physicalism is that somehow or other the matter and the way it bumps into its own properties, the information contained within it in terms of its components and how they interact, this is sufficient to specify all the physical manifestations. Now, in trying to keep to that as their thesis, I'm afraid physicalism has to invoke something we said we really didn't like way back in our first talk. It has to invoke randomness, that somehow or other the choice and order of physical things or biological things is all produced by the random interactions of all the ingredients, somehow within the constraints of the laws of physics. But why are the laws of physics the way they are? Well, they're also randomly fine-tuned. So using randomness like this, well, it's no explanation. You're simply saying something happened, but you're not giving us an explanation of how or why it happened. So as we explained way back at the beginning of this webinar series, randomness is not a scientific proposition. It may be something you want to believe in, but it has no explanatory value. It can't be tested, can't be falsified. It's just a belief. And in the Atma paradigm, we are not going to give a lot of credibility to explanations that rely on unexplained sources of information. Why? One, because it doesn't explain anything. And second, because there is an obvious source of information that is available to us to draw on. And in our model, we've got consciousness. This consciousness we have explained is a source that is outside of the system. You know, it's the person standing there at the shelf of beans. It's not part of the shelf of beans themselves. They're not all jostling to see which one's going to fall into my supermarket trolley. No, there is a conscious entity which is applying intention, choice and order in order to pick out that Heinz baked beans and say, this is the one I'm taking home with me. So you can believe in randomness, you know, and I'm not saying you have to give up all your belief in it. And I understand it's got attraction for some people because maybe it helps you avoid the bigger questions about ourselves, about free will and how the universe operates. So I can see why some people might want to believe in it. But to think that randomness is the sole source of information, of all things in this world, to me seems irrational. Especially when we know that consciousness itself has the ability to inject choice and ordering information into the world. So how can we kind of ignore that? So the Atma paradigm suggests that there is much greater potential for understanding the workings of the physical world if we honestly try to explore information, and perhaps our suggestion that we include consciousness. We know it can supply specifying information. And we have talked previously that the conscious entity, the Atma, is considered both in philosophy and from the Vedic point of view as a causal agent. We have talked about how its intention and the information that intention produces has potency to change things and to manifest things. And that intention and the information it contains becomes the efficient cause. So consciousness as the agent supplies will, which is converted into intention within the cognitive functions of the mind and intelligence. That intention provides the specifying information which acts as the efficient cause which imposes choice and order on the material cause, the pool of potential ingredients. And by doing that, it creates specification of those ingredients into a format, in this case the word brains, which is a very specific effect from that potential group, thanks to consciousness as the agent. Now, I want to clarify some of the terms we've just used, but this chart itself is probably the key to what we're talking about today. I want to talk about the agent and the doer. I've referred to consciousness, the Atma, as the agent. We've talked about this before, and we mean that as an agent, it is a source of will and agency. It can affect things. Now, I'm raising a question that maybe some of you who may be students of the Gita might ask about this. You may wonder, well, how does this square with the statements in the Gita that the Atma is not the doer? And I want to explain the difference between agent and doer in terms of an analogy that is given in the Vedanta Sutras. And this is the example of a carpenter working with his tools. Now, Vedanta doesn't mention anything about having a power circular saw, as this gentleman has, but we're just using it as tools. So there's different things in this picture. I've got little arrows from 4 little tags. Let's start with the material cause. That's the material stuff, the wood, the timber that he's working with, the nails, all the things that he's using. All right, so that's the stuff that's going to get organized into, say, a piece of furniture. Now, what is acting on that material are the tools. So the saw in this case, maybe a hammer, drills, and these tools are used to manipulate the material. So the tools in one sense, represent the efficient cause. They're what going to actually act on the matter in order to produce the end result that we want. But all of this is happening by the will of the agent, the carpenter. He decides what he's going to make and when he's going to do it and how he's going to do it. So his will is transferred via his arms. It is the willing energy, or in Vedanta terms, the Shakti of the agent, that determines how the tools are to be used. So hence the Vedas explain that the real doer is not the agent, not even his will, but it's the combination of the efficient and the material cause. Okay? That's what's doing the business. That's where the actual action is. So in this world, it is the material cause and the efficient cause which are considered to the doer, and they are distinct from the agent and the agent's expression of will. So the carpenter is the causal agent, and it's the will. His will is converted into activity and manifestation in the physical world. Now, material stuff, therefore, is made up of two basic fields. And this is what we've been discussing in our framework, the continuum of reality. We've said there's the cognitive stuff, and that's the set of the persona, the character, the actor. We have intelligence and the pool of the mind. So those three, we said, form the cognitive functions. So that's the cognitive stuff. And we have the physical stuff. And we divided that into the proto-physical qualities, which you don't see, but which inform the manifestation of the physical properties within the elements of this world, which you do see. So the cognitive stuff and the physical stuff together, they provide the material cause. So all the mind stuff, all the physical stuff together, that is the material cause. But the efficient cause is the specifying information that gives order and coordination to the components of the material cause. Now that's a tough one to just take in at the moment. I will unpack that. But we're going to see how the efficient cause and the material cause work together. So the combination of the material cause with the efficient cause manifests all the material effects. Now, this is a little, I'm going to give a couple of terms here. These terms are not so important for you to follow all the argument, but I'm mentioning them because I know we have certain listeners in the audience who do kind of need to understand how these terms connect with certain Vedic terms. Now, often you'll find that the combination of both material and cause together are called prakriti, the material energy, if you like. So prakriti refers to the totality of material reality. It's all the stuff, matter, energy, everything that manifests it. However, in many of the texts, in deeper analysis, only the material cause is designated as prakriti, and the efficient cause, the information aspect, is called maya. So prakriti, and I think it's an important distinction to make and probably useful for how we are analyzing it today. So prakriti is the material stuff of matter, and maya is the specifying information stuff of matter. Prakriti is the material stuff, the actual stuff that ultimately presents itself as properties to you, but maya is the specifying information stuff. Now, information, what is it? Right? Simple terms, specifying information, the efficient cause, acts on material ingredients, the material cause, and produces a physical effect. So, in this case, we've got a lump of clay, and that clay can be turned into a beautiful vase, as we see here. But it requires information and the Shakti of the agent. So information has to tell all those clay particles how they're going to rearrange themselves into that pot and into that vase there. Now, so specifying information acting on material ingredients produces the physical effect. Let's look at it a little deeper. Now, this idea that everything is matter and information is starting to become a feature of the way physicists now talk about the world. And perhaps surprisingly that someone, Daniel Dennett, will talk about it in this term also. He says the only thing that exists is matter. Oh yeah, matter and information. So this is the physicalist idea, that the only thing that exists is matter. Oh yeah, matter and information. But the question to them and to all of us is information real? Is it tangible? And how does it exist? Now, here is why information is regarded as significant and why it is regarded as real in physics. Because we see certain forces at work in this world. One of them is entropy. Entropy is a feature of how nature behaves. And I've used that word carefully because it's going to be used as in a definition to come. And we know entropy relates to information content. Often it's said that it's the tendency of something to work from order to chaos. And that's kind of shown in this little picture, where the little particles that make up the E very nicely over the course of the word are getting distributed so that the final letter Y is now less visible. So entropy is a feature of how this world works. And it's defined in different ways and used in different branches of science in their own ways. In structural terms, and I think this is a good way for us to look at it, it is the number of ways a system can be reconfigured without losing its integrity. So let's say you've got 7 little cubes and you can arrange them in various ways. However, there's only a small number of combinations that will produce the structure of the tower. You can produce them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on top of each other. You can move 7 down to the bottom. You can move 2, change it around with 5. So there's a number of ways that you can arrange those little cubes in order to get a stack, as shown on the left. But there's not that many. So that is low entropy. There are few different ways of doing it. So because few, it's low entropy. Whereas on the right-hand side, you see the 7 cubes are just kind of scattered as a kind of bit of a muddle, right? There's no specific way that we're demanding for them to be related to one another. They're not stacked, they're not kind of arranged next to one another, however. So there's lots of different ways that you could arrange them within that square without losing kind of the integrity of them as a muddle. Now, so having a lot more ways to be arranged within the square and still just be a muddle means that they have high entropy. So fewer ways to be arranged means that the stack has low entropy rather, and having more ways to be arranged means the muddle has high entropy. Now some mathematicians argue, well, there's no real difference between the two situations. You need positional coordinates for each of the 7 cubes to specify either the stack or the 7 grouped in the little muddle on the right. You could define that there's specific positional coordinates to define both of them. And in data terms, it doesn't look like that the data is any different. It's just different numbers to put them in a stack, different numbers to put them in a mess. But this misses the point. When the stack is needed to serve a purpose that cannot be served when the cubes are just scattered. And that is true of every day in physics, in biology, in cosmology. We require things to take low entropy states in order for them to be useful to us. And that's true in biology, it's particularly, which is something we're going to look at. I'll give you another example which is a little easier. Here we have a sandcastle. It's obviously been on, I don't know where it's built, but it's got a little patriotic Union Jack on the top of it. Now, there are fewer ways in which to arrange the sand particles to manifest a sandcastle with all its specific features of turrets and things. So, low entropy. Whereas the sand on the beach is just scattered. It can be any way, just sand on the beach. That's high entropy. So, low entropy and high entropy. However, over time, the winds of time blow and all things that are ordered tend towards a disordered state. So the sandcastle just becomes whittled down one sand grain at a time. And as the sand grains merge back into the beach, the sandcastle shape has disappeared. The sand is still there, but the sandcastle shape has disappeared. The material cause is still present there. But what has been lost is the efficient cause, which brought those sand particles into the structure of a sandcastle. That's now been whittled away by entropy. So entropy is the tendency for things to lose the ordered structure and move towards a state of disordered higher entropy. And what I'm going to suggest to you is entropy is a mode of nature. Why? Why can I call it a mode? I'm using the word mode as in its proper sense, a way of operating, a way of doing something. Like, for instance, your department at work may have its own way, its own mode of operation, or your preferred mode of cooking is vegetarian. So mode is a good word. It conveys the sense that this is one of the ways that nature acts, and we can use it without dealing of the question of why it does what it does. But because this is the Atma Paradigm, we will deal with that question a little bit later. But for now, we're looking at entropy as a mode. It's one of the ways that nature behaves, and you can see that it's dealing with information. The information that is involved with low entropy, like the stack of our cubes, and with entropy which moves that to the high entropy state of the scattered cubes. So entropy is not the only mode of nature. Recently, I was listening to a physicist called Brian Greene. He's professor of physics and maths at Columbia University in New York. And he was in the UK promoting his latest book, Until the End of Time. And what he explained, from his point of view, is that there are two forces at work in nature. So we have entropy, which we have discussed, but the other he called evolution. Now, the word evolution is problematic for him in this context because he's referring to a process that can be seen in both organic and inorganic things. Others have used a different word. Instead of evolution, they've said generation. But also that's got its own connotation because it means that which comes from something else or gives birth to something else in one sense. So the real thing that these scientists are trying to convey is that not only do things start to fall apart through entropy, but things seem to form into complex objects and processes through a process that I'm going to call formation. So entropy is a mode of nature and formation is another mode of nature. So just like entropy, we see formation at work seemingly manipulating matter to produce all sorts of incredible structures and actions in nature, whether it's ice crystals, beehives, cell division, mitosis, all biological forms or ecosystems. These are very complex situations. Something is bringing matter together in this way. And something is also trying to pull it apart. So two modes at work. Now, here's a chart which tries to put them together. It shows entropy, which, you can have things which are highly ordered. That's the low entropy, and then tending to the disorder. So along the bottom is entropy. But up the side is formation, which is producing effective complexity. So this shows that you can have entropy working, but also formation working. And it's this tension, this kind of dynamic interplay of entropy and formation that's most evident, and what they've noted here is biological life. And again, I mentioned that we'll be looking at that in great detail next part. But for now, we just need to convey the reality of these kind of forces or modes of nature. These are the way nature works. And so entropy and formation have an ability to produce everything physical that we know of, according to the physicists. So both the inanimate stuff and the biological. But this chart is not complete, and it doesn't show time. So it presents biological life as a kind of apex of complexity. But what it doesn't show is what happens over time, particularly on biological life. So this is a two-dimensional chart. I'm going to turn it into a three-dimensional chart like this. And I hope this is clear. It's a little bit of a mess, and this is quite an amateurish arrangement. But what you see there is that if we project along a third axis, you see time, then biological things seem to remain. They hold their forms. Our body keeps together. Okay, you know, there's a few changes as time goes on, but by and large, these incredibly complex systems of cells and organs and organisms hold their status against all the odds of entropy. So our three dimension would look like this. So this indicates that entropy and formation are not enough to explain what we see happening in nature. We need a third mode, and this is stasis. This is a potency, the same as entropy and formation. It's another mode at work in nature. It has the potency to assist things to persist in their structural integrity. It is a kind of enduring potency. Now, it's not as obvious to the physicists as entropy and formation. And I think that's all just part of their misconception of the things don't change, nothing has happened. Whereas actually in nature, if things don't change, we should question why they didn't change. If formation and entropy are the two forces, why don't things change more than they do? Why aren't things more susceptible to the modes of entropy trying to break them down, or to formation trying to build them up? So in many ways, what stasis seems to be doing is acting as a sort of dampening effect. Now, what I mean by dampening, and I don't know if you did this in physics at school, you know, think of a pendulum swinging. If you let it swing, it can swing big oscillations. That's the light blue line, you know, from side to side. So it's a big amplitude. So when you see the chart, it means it goes tall. It goes the long way up, right? So if you apply dampening at those arrows at the top, then what you're doing is putting a little bit of resistance on the swing of the pendulum and stopping it swinging quite as widely. So the red one is medium level dampening and the dark blue is heavy dampening. So in this way, I would suggest that one of the key functions for the mode of stasis is to moderate the wild fluctuations that would otherwise occur if entropy and formation were just left to their own devices. So I'm suggesting we have three modes of nature acting on matter. Entropy, which is observed as reduction of order, deterioration, decay, dissolution, and inertia. Formation, which is seen in the action of synthesis, generation, action, creation, and increasing order and complexity. Stasis, which kind of imbues preservation, continuity, maintenance, durability, permanence. So these are our three modes of nature. And there is a certain combination of them. We can arrange them like this in a kind of three-way spectrum of colors, like our triangle. And I've chosen green for stasis, red for formation, blue for entropy. And we can take, so what we're saying is that specifying information is a combination of the respective quantities of these three forces of nature to affect formation, entropy, and stasis on physical stuff. So think of it like this, the little triangle in the middle of the big triangle there. That's just a point somewhere within our spectrum. And we can analyze it sort of quantitatively. I'm not saying we can put numbers or metrics to this, but sort of in general terms. So the nature of that little spot there can be defined as the combination of the respective quantities of each of the three modes, i.e. how much of the power of stasis does it have, how much of formation, how much of entropy is contained within that little thing. And that little triangle, therefore, is a specific combination of those three modes and their abilities to do the things that they do. So that little triangle, therefore, represents a certain amount of formation, a certain amount of entropy, and a certain amount of stasis that will affect the behavior of physical stuff. And that is all that affects physical stuff, ultimately. This specifying information. So the three modes, stasis, formation, entropy, these together provide the information that underpins and specifies physical matter. They are the efficient cause. So they're the efficient cause of reality. This acts on the material cause to produce everything we know in the universe. So people, when they talk, even though they don't accept stasis, but at least if formation and entropy are recognized as modes, we have to ask these physicists, well, okay, what's their status? What are they made from? How do they work? How do they actually have power over matter? What's the metaphysics at work? And physics really has no answer for this. It just knows that these are functions at work, and they can try and model some aspects of it mathematically. They know that these functions change the information content of material things, either for the better or for the worse or whatever. But they have no ontological category for information. And that is a failing of physics. However, we'd like to offer a little help on this. We have an ontological category of information. We have some way of dealing with them. We can show how these work. So the Vedic texts, we're going to borrow on them, name these differently. They don't use these words stasis, formation, entropy, but the functions are similar. We have stasis, which equates to the guna, the mode or the quality of sattva. We have formation, which sort of equates to the guna or quality of rajas. And we have entropy, which equates to the guna, the quality of tamas. So stasis is sattva, formation is rajas, entropy, tamas. Now, I'm not saying that there's an exact correlation here, because how physicists use formation and entropy is different. But I believe that they're talking about the same effect on nature. But they haven't got a way of describing that in metaphysical terms. Therefore, I think the use of the Vedic model of the gunas will be very helpful on this. Now, I should mention that for now, I'm focusing on the action of the modes in terms of their effects within physical stuff. And I do that because I'm trying to show the connection between the world of physics and hard stuff, and trying to give evidence and rationale for that. And I want to be able to regard the gunas as real aspects of the physical world. However, the Vedas explain that they also act on more subtle material nature. They act also on the cognitive elements, and I'm going to develop that a little bit further today to show how that feeds through. But there's a whole area of psychology that could be explored by just looking at how the gunas work within our cognition, our psychology, our outlook, and so on. So, I'm going to refer to the particular combination of the quantities of the three modes as guna data. I apologize for that phrase, but I find it very useful that when we're looking at one particular combination, which has of specifying information. This is information that has the ability and power to specify material stuff from a potential of material into a specific. So guna data, it's the combination of how much stasis, how much formation, how much entropy. That's wrapped up in that little packet of guna data. Hope you're going to get used to that. And now we have a sort of idea what information is, how it's grounded as a tangible form of reality. And we're going to show how the Atma Paradigm then uses this to link it to consciousness and show how it works psychologically and explains the way nature operates and how it can be manipulated. So let's fit the three modes into our metaphysical model. Instead of using that big continuum, I'm just going to use a chart like this, which I hope is simpler. And we have consciousness and we have matter, material cause. In general, we're using the word prakriti. But that's divided. We've got consciousness as the Atma. And we have divided matter into the cognitive functions and the physical stuff. We have divided the cognitive functions into persona, intelligence, and mind. We've divided the physical stuff into proto-physical information, physical ingredients. This is all in those other charts that we've given. Now we look at the effect when the Atma expresses its will, and that is then absorbed within the cognitive functions as intention. Now, this is where the modes get to work. They take intention and they say, oh, this intention can be categorized in terms of our sattva, rajas, and tamas, as how much stasis this involves, how much formation this involves, how much entropy this involves. Those three together, are used to qualify and determine the nature of our intention. So the actual intention is basically a set of guna data. And then this feeds through and defines the nature of proto-physical information. Proto-physical information has the ability to be manipulated. It's still matter, proto-physical stuff, but it is proto-physical stuff that can absorb this guna data and thereby manifest subtle sense qualities. And the guna is further passed along and becomes starts to manifest the physical observable properties, both in terms of the essential nature, which is the kind of common feature, like you can say a cow, that's the essential nature, that object is a cow, but it has a gross nature or more specific, well, it's a brown cow with horns, okay? So that's becoming more and more specific as you go. So in this way, the guna data as constitutional information of matter passes along. It's formed within the intention. It specifies what this intention is all about. And now that guna data is being used at every step along the way. And I've added a line at the bottom for those who particularly like phrases from the Vedas. This particular set, Arthavatva, Swarup, Sukshma, Stula, and Anvaya, are taken actually from the description of the Yoga Sutras. Now, what is actually important to recognize, it is the same guna data being passed along. To give you an example, here is an architectural project I was involved with a few years back. And it starts on the top left as a concept in the mind, an intention, a picture of what it might look like. Then that same image, that same information was present within the drawings that had to be submitted for planning and building regs and things like that. Then that same information was manifest in all the kit parts, the sections of a timber frame building. So all the sections that were built individually. So same information, but now in kit form. And then finally in the shape that it actually manifested at the end of the day. Same information, but it comes in different formats. And this is what's happening with the guna data. We can think of the various aspects of the fields of matter as vessels. Think of them as pots that you can contain information in, little boxes if you like. Okay, we've got one for the cognitive functions, we've got three for the physical, proto-physical, general, and particular. All right, now basically we take the same data, the will of the Atma is acting on this jug of water. So the will of the Atma is established within the character and the agenda of the persona actor. That's what we've been describing in previous sessions in this part. So, and that will is now categorized in terms of the three modes, the gunas. What does this intention involve? And that produces, oh, we see a little stasis has appeared there for no particular purpose. So in this form, so our intention is being analyzed. And it manifests the specific forms of our thoughts, ideas, and desires. Now, we can look at our intention as a flavor of the three modes. Is our intention clear? Is it benevolent? In which case, that's going to be of the sattva or stasis mode. Is it ambitious? Is it self-seeking? Is it eager to make some big changes? So maybe it's imbued with rajas or formation. Or is our ambition kind of full of inertia or hurtful or even harmful to ourselves. In which case, sorry, I'm just having a call coming through from Mantri Raj. Hope it's everything is running smoothly. So our intention can be analysed in that way. So when the same guna data then flows into the proto-physical field, it manifests as the data defining the subtle sense qualities to be manifest. And when it then further the same data, guna information, goes into it produces the general properties. Here we've got a cow, and here we've got a brown cow. So in this way, the same data is being passed along, and it forms the constitution of the other different elements. And that's why it's described in this way. From the intention, arthavatva, you generate the guna data, the anvaya, the constitution. And that produces the svarup, which is the, well, actually it's the wrong way around, so it's the shukshma, the subtle qualities, and the svarupa and the stula. So the idea is that if the same data is passing from intention all the way through, then if you vary the data, you vary the output. Think of it like a 3D printer. On the right is the coding that you can get in order to print. So that's, you click the button there, the data will go to the printer, and you will get a nice little Yoda, whatever it is, being printed. Now, click another set of data, you'll get a little man being done. So vary the data, vary the output. Just by changing the guna data, that is the constitution of the objects, you change the manifestation. This is an important principle. So one combination of guna data produces a specific effect in terms of manifestation or action. So we've got our brown earthenware pot. Another combination of guna data produces a different specific effect. A nice colourful one was being painted with birds and owls and things. Now, I'm going to suggest you try this at home. You can vary guna data in order to affect the outcome. You can see how you can change the modes of stasis or of entropy within an object. This is the rice experiment. So, cook yourself a pot of rice. I did this, you know, and you eat the rice, but I took a little bit of it, and I had these two types of containers. One container, and I put exactly the same amount of rice in each container, and from exactly the same part of the pot, so that they were as identical as they could be. Okay? But one of them I labeled thanks, and the other I labeled fool. Now, here's what I did. Every day, morning and evening, I picked up each one in turn. So if I picked up the thanks one, I would thank it. I'd say, oh, rice, you are wonderful, you are tasty, you are nutritious, you are feeding my family. I'm very grateful. You know, they are a gift from nature and from God. You know, I really appreciate you. And I would do that for a minute. And then put it aside and pick up the other one, the fool. And I would really give it to it. You idiot, you fool, you are useless, you are just disgusting muck. It's just horrible. And you've got to be really, it's a terrible thing to do to lovely rice, but you've really got to give it to it. You've got, I was having such trouble with a telecommunication company that I just let all my anger, all my frustration out on this poor rice. Now, did it morning and evening. Those who devised this experiment say you do it for a month. I did it just for 1 week, because after 1 week I couldn't bear to be so nasty to the fool rice. Now, I put them on the shelf. I kept them. I would move them around so that they were equitable at all times. They weren't in the fridge. They were just sitting on the shelf. After 9 months, the one on the left is the thanks. The rice is looking pretty good. I wouldn't say you should eat it, but the fool one is starting to disintegrate. It's got this mold on it, right? After 18 months, the thanks rice is still pretty good, whereas the fool one is now disintegrated into this liquor. After 4 years, The one on the left, the rice, is still intact. And basically this brown stuff is just really, really horrible. I took a picture the other day. After 8 years, the rice, the thanks rice, has not deteriorated the same way as the fool did within 18 months. So this is interesting. What we have been doing is changing the modes that were associated with these 2 pots of rice. One of them, we were imbuing it with all the stasis, sattvic qualities of perseverance and being appreciated and positivity. And it actually has manifested in its maintenance, its stasis. Whereas the other one, we just gave it as much of the tamas, entropy kind of mode as we possibly could give it, and it thereby deteriorated. That information affected it. So just from my intention, nothing physical was done to either of these pots. Just from intention, we have the effect of stasis or entropy on physical stuff. So this shows the change that the modes can make to an object over time. By increasing the mode of entropy, tamas, we speed up its disintegration, its decay. By increasing the mode of stasis, we impose durability that would otherwise not happen. Now, these things happening over time, or more correctly, they happen because of time. And I just need to, we're running a little late, but I just want to complete this little section here. These changes happen over time because of time. Time provides the situation whereby the guna data manifesting the world at one moment can be altered to a new set of guna data manifesting the next moment. Therefore, time is another factor in our metaphysical model. And this is the basis for the Sankhya system for manipulating matter. Think of time like a projector turning the reels. These are the old-fashioned film reels. Probably some of our young folk have never seen this. But the principle still works for the digital world. It's the same thing. It's just that it's harder to show in a picture. So each frame on the reel is a distinct image. The frames don't change into one another. Each is a new set of data. But the flow of the frames by the projector, one after the other, gives us a sense that there is continuous movement. But not everything changes. So I want to look at something else here. Let's look at this change, these frames, as T1, T2, T3, and T4. At one moment in time, the guna data specifies a particular effect in nature. So at time equal to T1, the guna data 1 produces effect 1. And the Atma can see that outcome. At the next moment, T2, the guna data has changed because of the specifications being changed, and that produces a new output, effect 2. At T3, the guna data changes again, perhaps, and produces effect 3, again observed by the Atma. And in T4, the guna data modified again. So we've got guna data 4 producing effect 4. So in all of this, the Atma, as the agent and ultimately responsible for the will that produces that intention, that produces the guna data for every moment. But the Atma itself is not affected by the changes either to the guna data or to the effects that are produced from that data. And the Atma is continuous through all these different time moments, T1, T2, T3, T4. Guna is changing, the data are changing, the effect is changing, the world is changing. The Atma isn't. Therefore, we suggest that the Atma is non-temporal, atemporal. It is not affected by time. This is a major implication of the Atma paradigm, that consciousness is not something that is changed or affected by time. Time provides the framework for the combination of the gunas to change from one moment to the next, thereby providing the opportunity for matter to present a sequence of effects, like the unfolding of a drama, or the playing of a film reel. But the Atma does not change in all of that. It remains just as the observer and as the willing agent connected with that, but it is not affected by that. Time only operates on the efficient cause and the material cause. So as a conclusion, the Atma is untouched, unaffected by the workings of time. And therefore we say the Atma is non-temporal or atemporal, or you can say eternal, permanent, and it is the permanent observer and agent of the workings of matter. So we watch and we will. We want things to happen, but we are not the doers. The doer, the actual effects and activities of the material energy are carried out by these three functions. Prakriti as the material cause, the modes or gunas as the efficient cause, and time as the factor that allows the gunas to manifest changing effects within Prakriti. So you need Prakriti, the gunas, and time working together in order for the material energy to manifest all the effects that you experience. All of these three things coming together produce the circumstances the Atma gets to experience. But it is the will of the Atma which is interpreted as intention and which then is embedded within the efficient cause as that combination, that specifying set of information within the gunas. All your intention analyzed, how much sattva, how much rajas, how much tamas, how will this affect formation, stasis and entropy. All your intention carried, categorized in that way, and that becoming the efficient cause which then acts on the material cause, taking the potential of this huge universe and manifesting it into the specifics of all the experiences that each one of us have and what we call our life in this world. So this analysis, I suggest, offers a key to understanding how the universe works. And it's going to be crucial to understanding the thing we cherish most within the universe, life. And that's where we will be going when we return with part 3, which is in 2 weeks' time. We're having a break next week, but in 2 weeks' time, we start the set of lectures on life. And we look at probably what is the oldest question of all, life. What's it all about? Now, unfortunately, I don't have Mantri Raj with me because apparently he had to leave. So I'm not able to take any questions and answers today. But we have run a little late. I apologize. As I say, next week is a break. But I hope to see you all the week after. It will be first part of first talk within part 3. And that will include a little bit of a recap of where we have got to, particularly in this last section. So I hope to do a summary. So if you've got friends and neighbours who might want to join in, they can join us for 3-1. The first one will give them a good kind of start to it all. And then we'll explore the wonderful, wonderful world of life on Earth and in this universe. Thank you very much to all of you. And I will see you in 2